Alright, this is Adam from Redbeard Fabrication. This is a quick rundown of the teardown of the Dana 44 Alpha rear axle and the Grand Cherokee, the WJ. So basically it's pretty simple and straightforward. You got 18s on the caliper, 2 caliper bolts. I always take the sensor out. It's a little number 8. Pull the sensor out just so you don't damage it. It comes through right here, so when you're pulling the actual outer hub out, you can actually damage that little plastic thing. And then the four studs have nuts on the back. They're 14s. I sprayed them all down because this vehicle has never been worked on. And you know, make sure your e-brake is off. A lot of people will have the e-brake set to pick up their vehicle and, you know, get it on jack stands, get it all set up safely, and then make sure you release the e-brake, otherwise you'll never get the rotor off. Take the rotor off, then like I said, caliper bolts, take the number 8 out, pull that sensor out, 14s on the back of the studs. Then what you're going to want to do is pry this outer hub straight out. You want to gap it enough that, you know, your shaft isn't any longer in the carrier. Then you come around, once you've done both sides, pull them out enough. I mean, you can pull them all the way out if you want. Just make sure you don't ding the splines on the other side that ride in the carrier. When you take apart your housing, I usually like to suspend the vehicle as high as I can and drop the axle as low, because the giant gas tank, got to try and work underneath it. But basically, once the shafts are out, you're going to take 19s out. This is very important though. You got to make sure your races and your original shims stay on each side. Same thing with the caps. So I usually just mark them and then set them down on the floor, so that once I bring the carrier back over here, carrier is all set up and ready to go back in. Once I come back over here, I'm ready to put the races back on their appropriate side, along with the shims. Start putting the carrier back in there, put the appropriate caps on, you know, driver and passenger side where they belong. Don't mix those up, especially if you're not changing gears or anything and you're just installing the locker. Nothing will change, so make sure you do not change the shims, especially, or the races, or your caps. So like I said, 19s, and that's pretty much it. You'll do the opposite, putting it back together anytime you take them apart. So before I come over here, I'll go ahead and take you know, a wire brush to the outside, take all the RTV off, do the same thing to the diff cover. I'll take care of that, so that once I get the carrier in there, bolted down nice and snug with the impact, I can put the cover back on, fill it back up, and we're ready to go. Just want to make a quick video on how to install the Aussie locker in a Grand Cherokee, the rear. So it's a Dana 44 Alpha. It's pretty straightforward stuff. But basically, you're going to replace the spider gears inside with your Aussie locker. You'll understand better once it all is in there, how it all works, and I'll show you. So, starting out, you have to literally back the retainer pin, the retainer bolt out that holds the center pin in. Well, as soon as I started, it snapped off right at the head. So it was either running there too tight, or this thing has never been maintenance. I mean, it smelled like roasted ass when I opened it. So luckily I have a bunch of spare carriers. People upgrade the lockers and stuff like that. So I have a new center pin. Took me quite a while, but I was able to get the other pieces out. Basically all I did once this broke off was I put this in the vise, you know, with padding on the ring gear, and since there was still a portion of the pin through our center pin, the retention pin, this portion, basically all I did was use a big spike and a mini sledgehammer. I ended up, like, I've had to do it several times before. You end up breaking off this piece so that you can get the center pin out. And then there was still a little piece in there that I had to drill out, but luckily it's all clear now. So after that, it should be very simple for you. You just back that bolt out. So once you get the center pin out, you're able to turn the spider gears. And just be aware, you're going to need a few of these pieces coming out of here. You don't need the, it's probably good we're replacing these. This bad boy's got chunks out of it. So we're not going to need those. But you will need the thrust washer off the back of these. So this is basically just to keep from metal on metal friction. So the thrust washer, you're going to need to install that. Take those off the back. With the carrier sitting like this, you got to pick this one up out. It comes out of either side of the carrier. Again, you're going to want the thrust washer. So basically all you're going to reuse is the thrust washers on the back, and I'll show you when we get to it, and your center pin. Now I'm going to spray out the carrier. I usually wait until I get it stripped down so that I don't waste nearly as much. But take some brake clean to it, clean it all up. Basically it for that. Oh yeah, wear your gloves and your eye protection. You don't want to get brake clean in your eyes. Do it all the time. I haven't gotten blind yet, but it burns. And I've worn about 17 pairs of gloves today working on this thing. But you see, a little bit of brake clean cleans it right up. Clean these off. So the next thing you're going to want to do when you're assembling your pieces, so these are what you're going to end up putting the thrust washer on the back of, and recommended, a little cheat, is use some grease, because you're going to want this all to stick together while you're putting it together. You drop the first one down in there. There you go. Thrust washer. These work. These little pins. And they're little springs. You want the nipple side to go towards the spring, so initially you're going to put it in so that it sticks in there. So to save a little time, I went ahead and did the rest of them. The easiest way to do it is jam a flat tip in there so that you can gap this. You want to get the pin down in the other side, and then get your spring, sit it on the nipple of that little pin, and then all I do is press down on the top of the spring and push it in there. If you need to, you can use a pick and push down on the top of it, get it in there, and just make sure it sits all the way into the recess. Once you get it caught on the lip, you can kind of just push it straight in there. It'll sit right on the pin, and it sits right in its little recess. Got all the sides done. Now what you want to do is those spacers in the center, you're going to want to pick them up and start getting your center pin back in. Swat your finger in there. Since you are holding up, I mean, you can stick something else in there. Get the center pin going. Before you get it run all the way in there, make sure you're going to have it aligned with your hole. So I usually stick a punch in it, orient it, because once you get it in there, trying to get the bolt down through it is a real pain in the ass. Off any excess, it'll dissipate anyways. And all you're going to do, make sure your pin is aligned, go ahead and thread it down in there, and your locker's all set. Just so you're aware, and I want you to write it on the back for any warranties. You got to measure the gap between the spacers and the actual center shaft. So measure the gap. You want it between, it says right here, you want it between 6 thousandths and 20 thousandths. So you can see they illustrate it here. Basically your distance between those center spacers and your actual center shaft. And the other measurement you have to take is the gap between the actual center pieces. They want that between 0.145 and 0.170. Anything wider and the thrust washers might be a little worn out. So just take those measurements and make sure you write them on the back as part of your warranty, and that's pretty much it.